are on the wire, but we cannot end this program today without bringing on, I think, one of the greatest photographers of all time, and that is none other than Roy Lewis. And we cannot celebrate Black History Month without knowing the contributions that this photographer spent almost his entire life documenting and sharing that history and legacy with you, the viewers. Roy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you started in photography in, we have 1964, but I think you have you know the story. So how did you get involved in photography, and where were you?
Really in high school. In Natchez, Mississippi in 55, working at a local newspaper there, City Bulletin. And the editor was a photographer and writer. So, once you get in, when you get started, as you know, your history, once you get that ink under your fingernails, back in the day, nobody does that now, but back in the day when we were publishing newspapers, the ink was involved and the presses and all of that. So that got me started. And then I moved on to Chicago and got hired at Johnson Publishing Company, and that was where I went to school. That place was my university, Johnson Publishing Company, Ebony Jet.
Exactly.
Ebony Jet New Magazine, yeah, that was where I continued my education.
Why was photography so, how did it capture your interest? What was it about photography that made you realize this was you?
Well, it was looking at other people's work, really. The book called Family of Man, and then Sweet Flypaper with Langston Hughes and Gordon Parks. No, Langston Hughes and Roy DeGarava. When I actually saw what they could do with photographs, the message that you could send, the story that you could tell, the impact, when I really began to look at it, and then other photographers at Johnson saw my interest and sort of kind of prodded me along. And then I got a camera when I was in the service, and when I began to look at what I could do, myself with my eye. I had the eye. I kind of had the eye already, the imagination and the eye. And then when you begin to think about history, Laurent Bennett did this book Before the Mayflower, and I studied that book. And I kind of began to put those two things together, that you could tell, that you could record history, and then the history then becomes art. And so they're all working together, history, photography, art, all of it is, for me, comes together. It works together.
What do you think is you have a lot of prize photos. We were so grateful that you allowed us to use in our last Our House issue a photograph of Dr. King in Chicago when he expanded, his civil rights movement into the issue of fair housing. Right. And you had a picture of Dr. King and I think Reverend Jackson and some others as they were leading a march. But you've got a lot of iconic photographs. What do you think is your most, for you, what is your most prized photograph?
It's a series. John Coltrane, I took in 1965, the day my daughter was born, Tasha. I had been to the hospital and, she's born. I went to the Downbeat Jazz Festival in 1965 and Soldiers Field. And this photograph of Coltrane, which ran in ebony. A lot of my photographs in that period ran in ebony. So they kind of got out there. Then my work with the Wall of Respect in Chicago. And of course, one of the highlights was my first trip to Africa in 1974 with Ali to photograph him regaining his championship with fighting Foreman in Zaire 74 production. It was a music festival, and then it was the fight. And Ali Foreman cut his eye and got postponed for 4 weeks nearly about. And so I stayed that whole time and got a chance to actually almost become a citizen of Zaire because I had a bank account. I was with Ali's family, recording everyday stuff. It was like a great time for me to be there, almost like a citizen. When you get a bank account in the country, I probably would have spent the money had I had the money, but I stayed there for those 6 weeks between the festival and the fight and got a chance to travel with Ali's family and photograph everyday life in Kinshasa. That to me was like, it doesn't get any better than that because all the things are coming together. The things that are happening around you, historic, and you're being there in the middle of it. And Ali, of course, when you're around Ali, something is happening all the time. I mean,
Hmm.
just whatever. I had corn. I went to his training camp, and one of my best pictures with him was him running down the road, which I call "Strong Man Keep Coming" after Sterling Brown's poem. But Ali was just to be around Ali was, as we know, we've seen they're rerunning the Ali film, Ben Burns film now on the WETA. And so, if you've seen the film, if you don't see it, plug in, check it out. Ali is one of the great people of this time, and I've been fortunate enough to photograph a lot of the great people.
One of we know some of us have been fortunate enough to see your exhibits in and around the DC area. I know you've exhibited in other places around the country, and now your photographs are also in the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Right, a lot of
What
them.
does that mean for you? What does that mean for you?
You know, it's like when you take a photograph, usually you're taking it at that time, but usually it's an intent. It's for a story, it's for art, it's for a gallery, it's for a book. But the museum is a place that people go and share, look at history that some of them have been involved in, some of the people they know. And a lot of the stories that I did for Jet and for Ebony, they're at that museum now. I mean, the Elijah Muhammad story on the nation, uh, John Coltrane picture. Um, I did pictures on nationalism, fashion, uh, jet pictures on all kinds of different stories, Oscar Brown Jr. And so they're now in that establishment. I mean, I didn't, they have Johnson's files. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
there now. And I donated a Wall of Respect picture, but now they have hundreds of pictures that are mine that are in that institution now. So that's pretty good. The other thing is I'm a part of the history makers, and those all the history makers in the Library of Congress. So I'm in good company there, and this photography, this camera has taken me a lot of places, and I'm still photographing, still working with it, still not as much, but I'm still working with it, and I'm still taking assignments from the Informer.
And we appreciate that. Like you, like Walt Carr, are in a community where there are a lot of picture takers, a lot of
Yeah.
folks now because of this thing, this instrument that we have now, allows us to do a lot of work, and the quality of the photographs are much, much better than they were in the beginning. But if there's somebody out there who really is aspiring to make a career out of photography. Is it still possible to do that? And what would you advise them in really sort of using that instrument to make a difference, particularly in the lives of Black Americans?
Well, choose subjects that you like first, and an area. Sometimes some photographers specialize. I say that's fine, but don't specialize up front. Sort of take a little bit of everything, and like some photographers are sport photographers, some are news photographers, some are art photographers, but decide on an area because you have more options now. You got more formats, more areas to sell images, and the value of photography has gone up. I mean, when I was starting, if you got $500 or $600 for a picture, hey, that was great. But now it's thousands, and so it's a profitable, with a lot of competition because that little thing that you just waved there, that little camera on that phone, which iPhone spent a lot of money to develop. I mean, I'm on an iPhone now on television, so hey, and the picture quality is good and the sound is good. So, it's here to stay. It's the phone cameras are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. But I would suggest start with a camera, a regular camera. I would suggest shoot black and white. I would suggest shoot what you see in front of you and then begin to make prints. Don't just look at it on your computer. Make a print. There's nothing like looking at a print, an actual physical print, because that tells you something that you can't get off the screen or looking at it on the phone. Look at prints. That's what collectives are looking for, prints,
Mm-hmm.
black and white prints from negatives. And that's where a lot of the value, I know that we're in a digital age and all of that, but the collectives are looking for negative prints, printed black and white. I'm meeting with someone next week about prints for the museum, and that's what they want, are prints. I mean, it's all open. I mean, it's when I started in the 60s and the 50s, the avenues, it was just newspapers, magazines, but now you have almost unlimited. I mean, it's still, it still has by barriers, let's just say barriers, but their opportunities are more, and more of the young people are going into commercials, working with ad agencies and international magazines and international film. And that's another area. I mean, you can go into film. I went into film. I moved from photography into film.
Wow. Well, I wanna, Roy, we could talk all day because there's a lot of other questions I really would like to ask you, but we'll spend some other time on that. Just protecting your images, copyright, all that kind of stuff. I think folks don't really think about now because of this.
Yeah.
But we'll have a conversation about that a little later. But I want to thank you because of the contributions that you make to Black history because of the work that you've done throughout your career, and we're so blessed that you're still at it. So
am I. I'm happy about it.
all right. Thank
Thanks
you
a
for
lot.
being with us. All
Thanks
right,
for
Roy.
having
Thank
me on
you.
Win. And this program, you got a lot of information. I was just listening to all this information that you got in this program today. It's really valuable in terms of our health, our state of mind. And I've worked for the Heart Association, so I know the important works that they do. And
Wonderful.
this was a great program today.
Thanks, Roy. I appreciate it. Have a good one.